Awesome. Okay, so to get started, as is tradition for our faculty check-ins at the beginning of the school year, please drop in the chat your name, your school, what you're most excited about for this year's Model United Nations program, and share with us how many years have you been a faculty advisor. We see a lot of familiar faces on our meeting today. Some of our returning faculty advisors are here, but I think we also have maybe one or two new faculty advisors too. So go ahead and feel free to use the chat if you can to introduce yourselves so we know who's in the room live on our meeting today. Let's see what we got. I'll give you a second. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, welcome. A lot of us are connecting from school, home. Wonderful. Welcome everyone. We're so excited. While you drop into the chat what you're excited about, your name, your school, how many years you've been working with us, I am so happy to report we have over 800 middle school students in our Model UN program this year, and we are just thrilled. Everybody, last year our program served 600 students and 26 schools, and this year we've grown the program to include 800 students across 40 schools. So we are so excited to welcome so many new teachers and schools to the program. I see in the chat, a lot of our teachers are saying the same thing, excited about the possibilities to learn with our students, back for another year in person, able to have all 3 conferences in person. Welcome to everyone.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No problem, Ms. Valerie. And just to say, because of the growth of our program, our assignments process is taking a little bit longer. We are not used to having to distribute so many countries and work with so many schools. So thank you for your patience. I know Kate has communicated this to you. It's a good problem to have, but we are just as eager as you are to get country assignments out to your schools and students, and they should be coming very soon. So again, thank you for your patience and flexibility as we do our due diligence and make sure that everything is right before we send it to you all. Our 2 topics for Model UN this year, just to review them quickly, are ensuring access to clean water and sanitation for all and reducing income inequality among and between countries. Kate's going to talk a little bit later about the assignments process, where will you receive them, what will the assignments document look like, in addition to what are the resources that we will provide for our 2 topics. And she'll walk you through the website and give you a nice little tutorial on that side as well. Well, thank you all again for being here and for making your introductions in the chat. I'll now pass the mic over to Kate, who's going to kick things off with talking assignments.
Well, everyone, it's so nice to see all of you. I know I've been emailing with all of you extensively, so it's nice to actually see you on camera. I'm so glad that we have a mix here of new advisors and veteran advisors. Of course, we're here as a resource to you, and you are also a resource and community to each other. So please feel free to connect with one another as the program goes on. The first thing that we'll do, and we have basically 3 parts to this meeting. We'll talk a little bit about the assignment process and one key difference for this year, actually, when you receive your assignments. We're going to talk about the Cultural Diplomacy Conference, which will be here before we know it in January. And then we're going to do a website tour, and you'll see where you can get the resources for our 2 topics this year. So I'm going to start with assignments. And of course, some of you are very familiar, and some of you will be receiving your assignments for the first time this year. As you all know, you will be receiving them through a Google folder, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go into here, and Mr. Wright, is it okay if I open up Global Leadership Academy's Google folder from last year?
Of course, yes, thank you.
Okay, absolutely. So I'm going to go in here, and now this is a Google folder that I shared with Mr. Wright last year.
Can you all see the screen share okay? I see it says it's loading, so I just want to make sure.
No. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
No.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So you can all see in here, and this is exactly what your Google folder is going to look like. You will have 3 subfolders to submit your resolutions. And if you choose to have your students write position papers, you'll be able to submit them here too, as well as your opening speech videos. But the document that is most important that will be in here right away when you receive your link is your assignment document. Now, before I open it up, last year it was a PDF. This year, what you're going to see is a Google Sheet, which means that you actually won't have to print out your assignment document and write it by hand. You can actually go into the Google Sheet and fill it out right there. And that way you have access to it, but the council also has access to it. And if you come to an event and something happens and you're like, oh my gosh, I forget which country Johnny is assigned to or which committee number he has, we can say, oh, we have that right here. And we can also pull up your assignment sheet. We felt that for this year with so many students, it would be really beneficial for all of us to have access. So that's one key difference this year. But for those of you who are new, I just want to pull up this assignment sheet. I know I've met with many of you individually and you've seen it, but just as a refresher, that sheet is going to have here your countries, and it's also going to have all of your conference dates. So you have that from me via email. You also will have it on your assignment sheet. The important part when I scroll down, and this is the part that you'll be filling out in that Google Sheet, is your student names, as well as their country and their committee. So just as a little review, you will have 2 to 3 students assigned for each committee, and committee 1 versus committee 2 really just refers to the room that they're going to. So not important for their research, but very important for logistics on the council's end. And whoever goes in these different spots is completely up to you. You can pair your students in whatever way you choose to. Any questions about the assignment process?
If we don't have any questions, I'd love to pose a question, maybe to some of our returning faculty advisors, which is how have you typically assigned students to their countries and committees in the past? Do you have students, choose their countries? Do you assign students based on like how you know they'll work well with one another? I'd love to hear from any of our previous faculty advisors how you've done assignments in the past.
Our concern is great.
So, hi, this is Dave Hart from Tradition Easttown Middle School. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So basically what I do is I allow the students to actually choose their partner as well. And then what we do is once they have completed multiple assignments to even get the opportunity to be assigned a country, then what they'll do is we'll have a meeting and they get random numbers, like they won't know the numbers. And then based on their number selection, they get to pick 1, 2, 3 in that order. And so once that country's gone, we mark it off and then we go to the number 2 person who selected that number. So that's pretty much how we determine the students' country assignments.
That's excellent feedback to share. And I see a lot of teachers nodding, hearing that feedback is really helpful. Any other teachers want to share how you've done assignments in the past with your groups?
One of the things we've done at Global Leadership Academy Charter Schools is that once we've brought all our scholars together and shared with them the countries, we also showed them what the topics were. And upon that, we allowed them to group up and just had a KWL chart, what you know about the country, etc. And at that point, what happens is that once we get them grouped, they're able to choose their groups, right? And when we talk about the countries at that point from the KWL chart and their past, if they have any experience about the country, they're able to say, maybe, for instance, Haiti, we visited Haiti. So there are some, we've actually took our scholars to Haiti. So there's some scholars who family members went on that trip with us, the excursion with us. So they're able to talk about that experience. So there are multiple levels and layers. 1 is the interest, 2, what you already know about, and 3, there may be a personal connection. We're talking about Haiti, you may have a family connection there. So we try to build it in so that the rigor is built into the relationship and the relevance of the country to the scholar.
I love that. All really great methods, right? For being able to assign students either countries or topics that they might already either have interest in or want to learn about, right? Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Wright. Okay, Kate, I'll let you kind of keep rolling here, but as you can see, it's so helpful to lean on and hear from some of our teachers who have gone through the ropes before. So we'll keep kind of asking questions and hearing from you as well, what questions you might have.
Yes, and thank you all for sharing, because Kristen and I can speak to, you know, the large outward facing council end, but you all can really speak about what this process looks like when you're a teacher in the classroom. So thank you for sharing. And I'm really excited to talk with all of you about the Cultural Diplomacy Conference, our kickoff event. It's in a little less than a month, and it's going to feel like it comes up so quickly because we have the holiday break right in there. But for those of you who are new, of course, this is our kickoff event. It's really fun. The students get to visit the Penn Museum, and the assignments that they have don't actually matter for this particular event, which is very important to know. And I see Tasha's hand up, Ms. Sanford.
You can unmute yourself if you're
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had another prompt on my screen, so sorry about that. Thank you so much for the information, and thank you all so much for being so willing to share your strategies on getting students together and picking the assignments. I am new, so I might have a silly question or not, and we just
That's a good
appreciate you.
question.
Oh yeah. But just wanted to know the format that you all have for the actual research. So are students meeting outside of school? Are we doing a club maybe for 1 week? I'm sorry, for 1 day a week? Are we doing after school, in school? How are you all getting them the time to do the research?
Right, has some input.
Sure. Great question. Well, Ms. Mackey from our West School, our West Campus, she has an after school program. However, she's pulled young people had lunch with the scholars. So during that lunch break, we're all collaborating together in one room doing research. As an after school program where they meet once or twice a week. They have their assignments, and they also create a Google Classroom where they're able to, based upon their countries, are able to get into their groups via Google Classroom, and so that way they can manipulate the documents, add information to their research as they go forward. So yes, it's all of that what you just said. It's we've created an after school program, but also with the Google Classroom and also the assignments that are given that they have to do to meet their benchmarks. One of the things they do is able to work with it, via their Google Classrooms as well. So everything you just said, all that stuff, how it's to your advantage to design your program the way it fits the needs for all the scholars and also align with your school day.
That was
at
absolutely
our
perfect.
school, we have what's called Creative Mind Wednesdays, where children choose extracurricular activities. So we just created and made World Affairs one of them, so that they had that time during that day to do all their research and whatever work they need to be done.
Now,
Yeah.
I have a club and we just meet, it's part of the debate club. We meet one hour a week, once a week after school. So I usually just put them in partners and they do it. Like we just keep to those meetings, and once in a while somebody will come in for lunch to finish a couple things, but mostly we can get it done in that time.
And then an hour once a week.
Right.
And then one of the things that I've done that's helped too is help create research guides that have like specific targets of like the type of information we want them to know. So if it's certain like economic questions about the country or how does their government function, just to kind of help narrow their focus into certain areas that they could research. It just kind of helps them, I guess, chunk it down rather than have such a broad array of information that they could look at. So that's helped me in the past too. I
I am a math teacher. would you mind sharing any of those resources if you like knew or point me in the right direction to get like a research guide?
Sure,
I think
can I-
I think those research guides are actually in the council's research folders, and it's like a worksheet, and it actually guides the students what information they need to develop about their particular assignment. So that's actually provided by the council, and Kristen and Kate can confirm that we use for a guideline for them to do their research. And then once they do the research, I have our students do a position paper, and there's all these guidelines are provided through the council. And then once they do that, that leads to the resolution papers.
Mhm.
So, and we meet weekly too as well. We actually have a junior modular club that meets weekly. Sometimes we meet in the morning before school. Sometimes we meet in the evenings. We do virtual. So we kind of do a different combinations of how to get the work done.
if I can also add, if I just put into the chat, there's a website called the CIA World Factbook. If you click it, no people to let you know, people won't be knocking at your door. But basically, what it is that it lists what all the countries of the world, and it'll tell you about the history, the population, and what everything that you need to know about the country. What are anything that you need to know about that country or a country, it's there. And just click it and it'll pop right up. So that could be a starting point, especially when you talk about water and talk about resources that we'll be addressing during this session. So it's just to help to get started, so that way you as an educator and as a facilitator can at least have a background knowledge of whatever the countries that you've been assigned, to go in and just go and prepare from there, so that way you'll have a working knowledge prior to your students getting the countries. It's called the CIA World Factbook, and I promise I use it all the time. If you click it, the people won't be knocking on your door asking. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Wow, thank you so much. That was more than I could even think that you all would respond with. So thank you so much for all those different ideas. Thank you.
Ms. Sanford, thank you for bringing the question, and thank you to our community for bringing so many wonderful resources. And Dave, yes, on our website, we have a research guide, and I'll show that to all of you during our little website tour. But you might find that your students respond, maybe a little bit better to something that you make. You're welcome to do that. But we do try to provide a lot of materials that can help you along the way. So everyone, thank you for sharing. And of course, our first event is coming right up, the Cultural Diplomacy Conference. A few notes on this event. It is our kickoff program. Your students do not need to have done any research prior to this program. They will not be divided by country or topic. They are coming to the Penn Museum to get excited about the program and to learn about different cultures around the world. So a couple of notes in terms of dress code for this event. There is no dress code, but we do recommend comfortable shoes because students will be walking around the galleries. In terms of what they'll be doing on this day, it'll be a little bit different from last year. So those of you who came to this event last year might remember that the students toured the gallery, and they also had the International Classroom Workshop. So this year, the Penn Museum is going through some changes with that program. So instead of the International Classroom Workshop, they will just be touring galleries, which we think is actually, very in line with what we heard from a lot of our students, which was they wanted to see more artifacts and more galleries. So really what this event is going to consist of is students touring the galleries, as well as hearing a keynote from the World Affairs Council about what culture is, what diplomacy is, and what exactly is cultural diplomacy, and what they'll be doing in Model UN. So some other logistical notes. In the middle of December, you will be receiving an email from Young Kim at the Penn Museum. She runs all of their education programs. Please keep an eye out in your inbox for that email, because that is your key to the Cultural Diplomacy Conference. She's going to send you your itinerary. If you have a very large group, you might have multiple itineraries because your group will be broken up for different tours. She's going to send you exactly where the students will be dropped off and
Mhm.
picked up. And I'm going to show you that entrance actually in a little bit on Google Maps. She will send you chaperone guidelines, but I can tell you now that the Penn Museum has a requirement of 1 chaperone for every 10 students, but she will send that to you in writing. She'll also send you guidelines on what to bring, as well as guidelines on lunch if you are staying for lunch, visiting the gift shop, and self-touring. But one important note, if you are choosing to stay at the museum and self-tour with your students, please do send me your departure time so that we and the Penn Museum know that all of the students are being accounted for at the end of the day. Any questions about those logistics before I show you all your drop-off points?
Okay, can I ask one question just for so there will be no keynote. So when we come in auditorium, well, there'll be the World Affairs Council will have their presentation like we normally do a culture, but we don't have to come back for the big speaker. Is that what you're saying? We'll just be doing the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
cool.
that is correct, Mr. Wright. And actually, those of you who have been with us for a long, long time might remember that before the pandemic, this was actually our format, was that we did 1 keynote. And then during COVID time, we had 2 over Zoom, and we kept that format last year. But this year, we've decided to revisit our original format and do 1 keynote. So the students have 1 presentation and their gallery tours. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Wright. And I'm going to show you all this entrance. We are going to be at the Harrison Auditorium doing registration, and that's also where the keynote will be. So ideally, your bus driver is going to drop you off at the Harrison entrance, which I'm going to show you on my screen. Can you all see the Penn Museum here and this sort of round tower? Is that clear on your screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Now, this address is the official address for the Penn Museum. I am going to ask you to ignore it for the moment because actually the drop-off point where we would like the buses to go is 33rd and Spruce. That is going to be in writing from Young. We also understand that some of your bus drivers may not be willing to drop you off at a place other than the GPS. If that happens, we do have greeters at every entrance who will lead you down to Harrison. But the easiest way is to be dropped off at 33rd and Spruce, which is right by the Harrison Auditorium. Any questions about that drop off?
And that is that round, we're in that auditorium space, that round part of the building is where we actually hold the opening keynote. So that is the drop-off point. Even if your bus drivers, the day of the program, say, oh, we're going to 3260 South Street, this is the address. If you could just tell them day of, that is the address, but it's a big museum with a lot of entrances. Our entrance is 33rd and Spruce, right?
Yep.
That will help you to get to where you need to go faster, right? So just a quick note there.
Who gives the bus driver the information? Like, don't give them the other one. Just give them.
Exactly. Yes, but we know because we've worked with bus companies.
I know.
Book them for the programs, and sometimes the driver itself, right, will have a mind of their own on the day.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So yeah, sometimes it's a game time thing you have to do, but yeah, we hope that this year it'll be a little smoother with getting everybody to where they need to go.
This is also where we do departures as well. We bring the students back to the Harrison Auditorium when they leave. So that 33rd and Spruce is the spot where you want to direct your bus drivers, and hopefully they'll cooperate with that.
Yeah, sometimes they have your number, right, for the day of, and they'll call and say, okay, you know, where's pickup? Or you can arrange that when they're dropping off. It's the same place. So if we get them at 33rd and Spruce to drop off, that makes it easier for them to pick you guys up too, right? Okay.
Question from, we're driving from Lancaster and we're bringing school vehicles that will need to park. Is parking in that area difficult? What does that look like?
So there is a parking lot that the museum actually uses. Kate, can you kind of go up to the map for me?
Yeah,
'Cause
sure.
I think it's actually on the map, at the other entrance. Can you zoom in for me a little bit on the museum?
Let's see.
So we can see the full, yeah.
Okay, here we
nice,
go.
Exactly. So, and then if you can scroll the map, the parking is right there where it says museum parking garage on the right-hand side of the map.
Oh, here it is.
Yes. So the entrance for vehicles is Convention Avenue,
Right
and then
here.
you loop around to the entrance of the museum parking garage. Okay.
Thank you.
And as far as I know, yeah, vans are fine in terms of clearance for
Mhm.
that garage. But yeah, that's usually right where a lot of the buses will drop everybody off. They'll think that that's the entrance on that loop around, but it's not, it's that other one. So if you do have a van or something that needs to park, you can visit the museum parking garage, and then all the information in terms of like the pricing for the garage, if they take cash or cards, that's on the museum's website.
Also, if you're coming, the educator who said they're coming from Lancaster, if they're coming up 76, if you get off the South Street exit, you'll be right there.
You'll be right there. Yep. Yep.
Wonderful to know. Thank you.
You have to get off the South Street exit on 76, and it's one
Yep.
of your this is the main thoroughway exit, and you're right once you get to the top of the hill. The parking in the garage is right across the street.
Thank you, because I will be confused on the day of, so I appreciate that insight.
Thank you. Helpful.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to stop my share here. One last logistical note, again, you'll have this in writing, but I'm sure some of you might be curious. If you're staying for lunch, if you are part of Group A, which is that 9:20 to 11:45 time slot, your lunch will begin at 11:45 after the keynote. And if you're in Group B, which is the 10:30 to 12:45 time slot, your lunch will begin at 12:45, and that's after you have your gallery tour. If you can, the Penn Museum shared with us that it would be really helpful if you could bring your lunches in big boxes, like if you have a W.B. Mason box sitting around your school, it's really helpful for the Penn Museum to have lunches in those boxes. So again, Young will be sending all of this to you in email with your itinerary and everything that you need. But if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, one of the things we do when the groups arrive at that Harrison entrance is we'll usually take your bin of lunches or box of lunches and put that in a special bin so that the lunches will follow your group. You don't have to worry about them getting to where they need to be if you're staying for lunch. And the same with coats and book bags, right? We have a very well-oiled operation for the Cultural Diplomacy Conference. And so once you check in, a lot of those items are taken care of and kept safe and secure throughout the day while you're moving around the museum. Of course, you're welcome to carry whatever you want with you, but because the students are in these different spaces, we like to make sure that we can help with those logistics. Okay.
So another important note on the Cultural Diplomacy Conference, and this is another case in which this is different from last year, but going back to our original model, your students will be completing the Everyone Has a Culture worksheet ahead of time. And I'm going to show you exactly where to find that on our website, but it's also going to be in your Google folder. So if you're like, I forget where this is, don't worry, it'll be right in your Google folder for you. And we'll move right into giving you a tour of the website so that you know exactly where to find everything. So I'm going to share my screen again with all of you.
While Kate does this, I'll just provide a little bit of context to this. So the Everyone Has a Culture worksheet, we like to say, is the student's ticket into the Cultural Diplomacy Conference. If the students show up and don't have it completed, we will have paper copies. It's nothing that you have to stress out about for the first program. It just makes it a lot easier if the students can do this ahead of time. I know some of our teachers probably plan a time where all of their students can complete this, or they just ask them to make sure they have it ready to go and completed the day of your program day. And then Kate will show you, we use it as a discussion activity during the keynote presentation. So if your students can complete it ahead of time, it helps us move into that discussion activity much faster.
Okay, thank you, Kristen, for that context. I'm going to open up our website here so you all can see where to find not only that worksheet, but also those resources that we were talking about earlier that will really help your students with their research. So when you come to our website, which is wacphila.org, you're going to go over here to the Education tab, and you're going to navigate down to middle school programs. We make this very easy for you. Right here at the top is our Junior Model United Nations homepage. Now, you actually will see that there are lots of different ways that you can get to our resources, but I think that this is the easiest way. Go over here to Junior Model United Nations, because this is going to have everything that you will need. The first thing I'll show you is where to find that worksheet. What you're going to do is scroll down here to Junior Model UN General Program Resources. And this is the page that you want to go to if you're looking for resources for any of the 3 conferences. And that includes the Cultural Diplomacy Conference. You can also see here that we have resources about the United Nations if you're looking for some intro work to do with your students. And then we have here our Cultural Diplomacy Conference resources. So this is the Everyone Has a Culture worksheet. It is posted here as a PDF. So if you click here, you'll go right to the worksheet and you can print this out for your students. So again, it's a reflection on their own culture so that they come to the Cultural Diplomacy Conference understanding that culture isn't just something that other people have, right? That we all belong actually to many different cultures. So that's one resource we have for you in the Cultural Diplomacy Conference section, but there is also another resource that actually Mr. Hardy had mentioned, and that is the Country Profile Worksheet. So this is a rather large worksheet that you can work with your students on over the course of several different meetings. It's really helpful to chunk it out. But this asks them a bunch of different questions about their countries. And actually, Mr. Wright, yes, we also endorse the CIA World Facts book because that has pretty much all the information that students will need. So that is where you would find both of these resources.
I will say, like, my feedback that I've heard from teachers is that the full worksheet can be tailored to your group, right? It might not work to distribute this worksheet and have all the students complete all the sections, but it might make sense to choose certain sections or divide sections up among the group. We don't collect the worksheet. We don't ask to see the worksheet. It is really just there as a resource for you to use. And it's not something, it's listed under Cultural Diplomacy Conference resource, but it's really something that makes more sense going into the prep conference because that's when the students will start working with the countries, right? For our first program, knowing your country and committee is not necessary. It's a kickoff program. It's meant to really excite the students about Model UN, about studying different cultures. And we try to make it as like easy and fun as possible before we get to the curricular stuff come February, March. So use this really, but customize it for your groups and the different levels, right, that your students have. I've even seen some students bring it with them to the final conference and use it as something to refer to. Yeah, you know, when they have their notes and things.
That's a great idea. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Kristen, because something that we saw students do at the prep conference, we have some Model UN trivia, and we had students bring worksheets about the United Nations, which of course, as I showed you, we have them up here. And then they felt really confident during that trivia game because they could look at their worksheets and find the answers. So yes, please know that your students are welcome to bring any resources with them to these conferences as supports. We also have down here, even though we're talking about Cultural Diplomacy Conference today, just so you all know, we have resources for the prep conference when that time comes. Something that's really nice is we have sample agendas of the prep conference as well as the final conference, because that is where your students will be broken up according to topic at the prep conference, and then topic as well as country and committee at the final conference. So you can see here, you have resources on position papers and opening speeches. You have resources on how to write a resolution. And then all the way down here, you have resources on that final conference. So you can even begin looking at some of this now if you would find it helpful. The other piece that we want to show you today, and I know that some of you have been eagerly waiting for this and we have it ready for you, are the topic sections of our website. So our 2 topics, and you can see them right here at the top, are ensuring access to clean water and sanitation for all, and reducing income inequality between and within countries. So I'm going to click on our first one here. And you can see that this is our topic overview and some resources that we recommend for your students. We put a lot of energy into finding developmentally appropriate resources with lots of different mediums. So there are posters here, there are videos, there are graphs, there are articles. We try to really cater these to a variety of learners. So these all are resources that have been vetted by the World Affairs Council that we recommend for your students. In late January, when our briefing papers come out, they also will be posted on these pages. And I'll just toggle over quickly to income inequality because, as you can see, you can get back to any of those pages when you go to our topic pages. And you can share these with your students, and this is a great starting place for them to do their research. Any questions about using the website or materials that you'll need? Okay, excellent. I'm going to stop my share. Any questions overall about this year's program? Any questions for the group at large? Because I feel like we are so fortunate to have such a wonderful group of teachers that share knowledge and wisdom with one another. So any questions for me and Kristen, or any questions for your teacher cohort?
Hey, I just like to make a comment, just for the new individuals. When I first started, I felt overwhelmed with all the information. But and I kind of like had to, with the council's help, kind of work through some things, like constantly call and ask questions. So I'm just saying, if you want to reach out to us, I'll be more than happy to help, and I'm sure others who've been in the program would be more than happy to help out, so it doesn't seem overwhelming. Because I know my first year, I was like, trying to pull this program together. And I got these kids in front of me expecting me to know all the answers. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna fake it until I make it. You know what I mean? And so, but it's an awesome program. Once you get the hang of it, you're gonna love it. You're truly gonna love it. But just reach out to us or the council, and Kristen and Kate are very supportive. I mean, I bug them all the time. So, and I still do.
We are here for you all to bug, right? We are here as resources for you. And Dave, thank you for offering yourself as a resource as well, because you all are some of the most valuable resources for new teachers starting this program.
Absolutely.
I agree. And I will pledge to, if anyone needs help, trust me, first of all, I know I don't know all the answers. I bug these 2 ladies all the time, right? I mean, all the time, literally. But it's best to ask than assume, right? So at that point, you're able to go and then find your way. So to all the new educators and all those new schools that are participating, you have a community of helpers. And if I can offer, if you could, not necessarily mandatory, one of the things I realized going in to this several years ago is, we mentioned the United Nations, right? We're talking about being junior UN diplomats. I mention this every time I speak to this. One of the things we do at both of our schools, Ms. Mackey, who is our global studies coordinator, and Ms. Williams on the other, that's on the call as well. we took our two groups of scholars to the UN, right? So they were actually on the ground. They actually walked to Midtown Manhattan. They actually walked through the building. They actually see the flags raised up in the morning, and they have the background about the sixth language, the Security Council, the 193 countries, and one of those countries they know going in, they will be representing. So and along with the information that you guys have, it just aligns so that way they have the ability to not just say this is what we're studying, but no, this is where we've been and we're studying it.
Mr. Wright, when your students come and they're at the prep conference with all of their knowledge about the United Nations and their country, it just makes the hearts of our staff sing. So thank you for sharing with our teachers how you really make this part of their whole school experience.
It's part of their curriculum. So in other words, what our scholars who are actually part of the council and do the specific work is part of our curriculum, so everybody gets it. So technically, everybody's part of the council. We just have these representatives that are representing the young people of both schools, Southwest and West at Global Leadership Academies.
And can I also add something real quick, Mr. Wright?
Yes.
So just to speak about the trip that we just went to the UN, if your schools do get an opportunity to go to like the actual UN and you get you tell your tour guide, and I told the tour guide that these are the junior diplomats for the World Affairs Council, and they gave them a tour based off of information that they would want to know for the specific council. So they give you an in-depth lessons within the council that they can take to ask questions moving forward. So it is a helpful trip as well if you do get those opportunities to go down to the UN.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw in the chat, Ms. Wallace had asked if we provide the trivia activities. And yes, we do some activities through Kahoot that we'll distribute to you all. For example, the briefing paper vocabulary or facts about the United Nations, right? And the one thing I was going to say, which Mr. Hardy does really well, and I know a lot of other teachers do too, is don't forget throughout this journey to celebrate your students' success, right? I feel like with World Affairs, it does not get celebrated as much as the basketball team, right? Or the cheerleaders or the theater or the other activities. So as your students participate in these programs, celebrate their successes, inform your school community about what they're doing, right? And have fun with it. I've seen some of our teachers at their World Affairs Club meetings have a day where they talk about the food of the different countries that they're researching, right? Bringing in the really fun culture stuff is going to really keep our students interested and engaged in the program. The research stuff and writing the resolutions and writing the position papers is the hardest part of the program for our students, but we don't want them to run for the hills, right? We want them to really enjoy this program and have a fantastic experience learning and growing their own skills as they go through it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I enjoy doing it. I think I mentioned to you before that I'm living it and I like my kids to experience it. It's just something about the actual life of someone in a third world country or underdeveloped or developing country. There's an experience attached to it. And as we discuss, I keep giving them examples. So the other day I said, would you like to celebrate the United Nations Day? And they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? Who celebrates UN Day? It's a holiday, right? I was a refugee, okay? UN Day, that it tells you you're going to have some big program. We're going on concerts. And what makes you excited to celebrate the United Nations Day? Because you understand that the UN provides school for kids. And then I said, can you imagine that you don't go to school on a day and they're like, what? They're kids who don't go to school. But they'll get excited celebrating United Nations Day because they understand the UN provided school for them. So there is something attached to learning, beyond writing the position paper, but the actual experience of knowing, those are the facts, the food, so yeah, that's great. I like that idea about the food. I thought about it. Just do some big thing, just bring food. Other kids who are not part of the program can come and just experience the cultural side of things. So yeah.
That's fantastic, Ms. Walls. Thank you for sharing that with us. Does anyone have any final questions before we wrap for today? Okay.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to all who are watching the recording. I know that we have a lot of advisors who are excited to watch our recording of the check-in. And just thank you to all of you for everything that you do for your students every single day, bringing global education to them, partnering with the council. Like I said earlier, how fortunate are we that when we convene one of these faculty advisor check-ins, that we have such wonderful wisdom come forward from our group. So please feel free to contact us at any time with questions. We are so excited to work with all of you and with your delegates. And please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas. If you're
Thank you,
celebrating.
everyone. Happy holidays.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Oh, yeah.